We are standing inside Fort Pickens, which is a massive, sprawling brick fortification located on the west end of a barrier island called Santa Rosa Island. So what we're actually talking about are two different structures that were built at two different times. So the first Fort Pickens, the brick walls that you see behind me, those walls were built here between 1829 and 1834. But like all technology, new, better, more advanced technology comes along. Between 1898 and 1899, that's when a new defense, Battery Pensacola, this black reinforced concrete structure behind you, was constructed and completed. Inspiration for forts like Fort Pickens, those masonry forts built in the early to mid 1800s, they were built because of the War of 1812. Conflict that lasted from 1812 to 1815, a war that pitted the United States against Great Britain. In that war, the Royal Navy and the British Army entered American waters, marched on American soil, and in at least one example, sacked an American community, a United States city, Washington, D.C., in which almost all public buildings were destroyed. With the end of hostilities in 1815, the United States government and the American people decided that nothing like that should ever happen again. So the US government created a board of Army and Navy officers who developed a national defense program. And part of that program was to build an integrated string or system of masonry forts at commercially and militarily important harbors, Pensacola Bay being one of them. The United States was largely concerned about European powers like Great Britain, France, and Spain meddling in American affairs. So these forts like Fort Pickens would be placed here not necessarily to go and engage in warfare with those powers, but rather to be here as these titans on the American shoreline to deter any interference in the United States. Yeah, let's dive in. As you walk through the historic entryway into the fort called the Sally Port, you're just going to be surrounded by masonry. Many of that masonry material dating back to the late 1820s and the 1830s when this fort was built. You're going to see arches. You're going to see these, what today look to be these very artistic angles. You're going to see long, dark tunnelways, and you're also going to see cannon. There are several different types of cannon, large and small, here in Fort Pickens to represent the types of weapons that United States soldiers would have been trained to use at places like Fort Pickens. When you look closely though, you can find more clues about the people who were here in the past. You can find the brickyard names stamped into some of the bricks. And in some cases, you could find palm prints or fingerprints left from the enslaved people who were forced to make the bricks that were used to build this fortification. From the 1890s all the way through World War II, the United States Army was present out here on the west end of Santa Rosa Island, building small concrete coastal batteries that mounted just a few cannon apiece, all as a much larger effort to fortify this shoreline and make it safe from foreign threats. So almost immediately behind me, a little bit to my left, that is an example of the risks that come along with maintaining a military footing, even in times of peace. In June of 1899, at the same time that Battery Pensacola here was completed, tragically a fire broke out in the Fort Pickens' north wall. The fire grew in intensity and it traveled and made its way towards this present-day gap where a rectangular room called a powder magazine was located. During this fire incident, there were about 8,000 pounds of explosive materials in that powder magazine. There was a detachment of U.S. artillerymen here. They tried to contain the flames, but ultimately failed and evacuated from the area. And they did so just before that magazine and the explosives caught fire and exploded, shattering this brick corner of Fort Pickens. For those who want to go out and enjoy the natural beauty, the natural environment, here in Northwest Florida, we have some of the world's most beautiful beaches. There are numerous places out here near Fort Pickens where you can gain access to the beach either on the Gulf of Mexico side of the island or on Pensacola Bay. You can go for a long or a short hike. Here at Fort Pickens, we have the northern terminus to the Florida National Scenic Trail. If you're looking for a long hike, you can go as far as about 1,300 miles and hike all the way to South Florida and Big Cypress National Preserve. There's also a lot of these outlying historic structures. Using the official National Park Service app, you could do a self-guided driving tour and go and park at a lot of those historic structures, learn about them through the app or through the signs that we have set up at each of those locations. You can come out for an entire day and go fishing or swimming or snorkeling here in some of the most beautiful waters in Florida.
You've got the old historic fort on one side and then the modern day naval base on the other. It's really an incredible place to stay.